Okay. I'm going to let in the public.
Great, it's 1 o'clock. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the May 25th, 2022 meeting of the San Mateo County Harbor District. Melanie, roll call, please.
President Ryring,
Here.
Commissioner Zemke, Commissioner Matoush,
Hi, here.
Commissioner Chang Karali,
Present.
Commissioner Lorenz.
Here.
Great. We'll start today's meeting with public comment. If anyone has a comment on an item not on today's agenda, please raise your hand and I will call on you in order. Captain Smitty.
President Raring, I'm so sorry. It looks like the timer is just having a brief difficulty entering the meeting. So I just need just 1 second. I'm so sorry.
Okay, thank you.
John Moran is also having some technical difficulties. He will be on the call shortly.
Who?
John Moran.
Okay, the timer should be up and going.
Thank you, Lizzie. Captain Smitty, I see your hand raised.
Unmute. Let's try unmuting. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Captain William Smith. I own the vessel Riptide here in Half Moon Bay. And I have been operating this vessel with a commercial activity permit for 25 years. I was told when I originally got my commercial activity permit that if there was any kind of violation, that the permit would be permanently, irrevocably revoked. Now we have people in the harbor that have are working without commercial activity permits and still conducting commerce, taking passengers out. I also understand that there is an issue with the insurance on that vessel as well. Don't know anything about the drug program involved with that or with the harbor ticket fees. As I said, when I started working in this harbor 25 years ago, it was on no uncertain terms that my permit would be revoked at any time there was a violation. And we have multiple vessels that have violations. One in particular that hasn't even applied for the permit. I raise great umbrage with that, and I want the harbor to address this issue today. Thank you.
The next hand raised is John Ullum.
Apologies, President Raring. We're still having some technical difficulties with the timer. Mr. Elm, you've been unmuted.
Okay. Well, once again, the Harbor Commission is in the news, but for the wrong reasons. Board President Nancy Raring decided to label people as Nazis, people who are looking or advocate for housing for others. I would suggest that Ms. Raring take a ride on Caltrain. Look at all the RVs that are parked in Mountain View. and along the road and in the parking lots. Go check out what's going on around the apartments up at Park Merced, and you will see hundreds of RVs. Now, these are not homeless people. These are not street people. These are working poor. These are people who had lives, people who had homes and have been forced out because of increasing rents and increasing prices, because we have just too many jobs out here. Too good, and you don't make any place to live for the people who don't make the big bucks. Right now, I can read you stories about how people over in Stanford managed to shut down the building of some housing for Stanford employees. I can show you how Nancy Raring has tried to pretend that her horse ranch is habitat for mountain lions. People are using excuses as to why they don't want other people living in their neighborhoods. So they got all kinds of them. They got environmental excuses. They got traffic issues. They got all kinds of issues. Nancy Raring, you speak of class warfare. When you call YIMBYs class warfare, well, I'll tell you who's got class warfare against them, and that's the working poor. It's people like you who have them living in RVs on the side of the street, because you won't allow any housing to be built in any neighborhood, anywhere. There are people like you, Nancy Raring, in Modesto, in Contra Costa, in Marin, in San Jose, and in San Francisco. People like you, Nancy Raring.
Sabrina, Sabrina Brennan, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to comment as a former member of the San Mateo County Harbor Commission and let you know, Nancy, how disappointed I am with your thoughtless and insensitive behavior. You need to spend some time outside of your Woodside Horse Ranch and look at how people live in the Bay Area. We have low-income people, we have unhoused people, we have middle-income people who are in desperate need of shelter and are having very difficult time making their rent, making their mortgage payments, struggling to find shelter. So I think you really need to reevaluate what you're doing. And I'm glad that you canceled your Twitter account, because you shouldn't be on Twitter. This week, you officially canceled yourself. You made headline news in the San Francisco Chronicle and SF Gate. You've been called out on Twitter for your narcissistic behavior disorder, and a growing number of people are calling for your resignation online. Ray Mueller, the District 3 supervisor candidate, whom you previously supported, has rejected your endorsement and publicly condemned your inflammatory rhetoric. And our state senator, Josh Becker, whose relatives were killed by Nazis in the Holocaust, has also publicly renounced you. Your behavior's been shameful, and you've brought some very negative attention to the Harbor District. And I think that you need to give that some deep thought.
And Haggerty, you have your hand raised.
Can you hear me now? Hello? Can you hear
Yes, we
me?
can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay. Good afternoon, Harbor Commissioner. I wanted to just say in regards to the I guess the plans of a kind of a cider bar at the post office lot. I just want to applaud the idea, but inside of that, I'd like to ask that you please look at the parking requirements and try to minimize for the overall of kind of a really natural, like a little park feeling. Please encourage walking. I have a friend that just got back from I think it was Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and you know, they have they have like, encourage walking into the and less parking. So, I mean, it's a system out there that's working, and it's making the areas very walkable and enjoyable to be at. So I just wanted to caution whatever, please push back on the county requirements for parking. And then there's probably some ADA requirements. Please, no bright orange bumpy pads. If they do require any kind of those bumpy pads, please use the gray, which is now the standard in El Granada and standard in many places now. As far as any lighting, please have the lighting international dark sky approved, seal of approval, specifically a very warm color.
I don't see any other hands raised. So if nobody else does, we will move on to the consent calendar. Do any commissioners have items they would like to pull from today's consent calendar, or do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Is
I'll
there a
second that.
roll call, Melanie? Oh, is there any public comment on the consent calendar? John Ullum.
President Rearing, this is the second meeting in a row where you seem to have no clue that there are public people participating in the meeting. You constantly forget to mention that the public has the opportunity to speak. You constantly need to be reminded that people have their hands up and are asking to speak. This has been going on for multiple meetings now. I need to understand, what is your problem? Do you have a problem with public participation? Do you not understand that that's what you're there for and you're supposed to encourage it? I really have an understanding why this harbor district cannot get any enthusiasm for anything it does when it does everything it can to shut down public participation. You cut people off without even saying anything to them, like the last gentleman. You just cut them off. And then you schedule meetings at 1 PM when most of us are working. I'm working today. I'm using my lunch break to participate. And I know you work, Nancy. I know you work hard because you consider yourself a victim of those YIMBY Nazis for what they've done to you up at your $6 million horse ranch and the fear they've put you in. So maybe if you would allow people to express their opinion and treat them as though they are welcome at your meetings by remembering that they're there, I don't see why you're encouraging anybody to be here. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands raised. So Melanie.
Wait,
President Reiring, I think Dan Haggerty has his hand raised.
Oh yeah, he went off my screen. Dan Haggerty.
Yes, I wasn't sure what happened, but I guess I learned from John Ullum. Yeah, I was just cut off. Feel that was a bit rude. I agree with the sentiment that John Ullum just mentioned. One of the other things I wanted to say is encourage this harbor district to relook at having meeting times where the majority of the community can participate. These afternoon meeting times are just horrible for your average community member to even attempt to participate. So I'll just stop there. Please be known as an inclusive district. Thank you.
Oh, regarding our timer, just for those listening, like every public agency, I know we have a 2-minute time limit for comment, and then the clock is stopped. So we move on to the next speaker. All right, I think we're ready now for roll call on the consent calendar item. Melanie?
Commissioner Mathush,
Aye.
Commissioner Chan Crowley,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Aye.
President Ryring.
Aye. Now we'll move on to the discussion items. First, I'd like to make a motion that we move closed session items number 1 and 2 to a future agenda to be determined. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any comment or discussion? If not, roll call, Melanie.
There's a hand raised, President Ryring, and I don't know if you can see these, but we have,
Oh, thanks. John Ullum.
Once again, President Waring, you just seem to be clueless that there are people participating in this meeting. Why are we moving this closed session? I mean, what's changed? Give us a clue. Why are we moving this closed session? Thank you.
Melanie, roll call.
Commissioner Chan Crowley,
well,
Oh,
no, Commissioner Lorenz.
Commissioner Lorenz has his hand up.
Before we take a vote, I'd like to know the reason for abandoning our closed session.
I'd like to have the full board here so that we don't end up in deadlocked positions on these items, and they aren't anything that's urgent.
Can I add something to add? I'll tell you why I seconded it, because I think that having Commissioner Zimke here to get the full understanding of, some of these items is important.
Your hand is still raised, Commissioner Lorenz.
Well, I'd like to just point out that when we cancel things like this, it's an inconvenience to members of the public that expect to hear from this commission. And we did know in advance that Commissioner Zimke wasn't going to be here, so this should not have been put on the agenda. That's all I have to say about it.
Roll call, Melanie.
President Chan Crowley.
Commissioner
I mean,
Chan
I'm
Crowley
sorry,
is
I'm
an
sorry.
aye.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Commissioner Chan Crowley. Commissioner Lorenz,
No.
President Ryring,
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush.
Aye.
The motion carries, and we'll move to discussion item number 10. Approve rates and fees effective July 1st, 2022. Julie, this is your item.
Good afternoon, President Ryan, commissioners. This item proposes that the district increase the rate and fee schedules by the increase of the consumer price index of the Greater Bay Area in 2021 of 3.2%.
Commissioner Ryring, if I apologize, may I interrupt for a minute?
Of course.
We have a request to split the rates and fees, item 10 into two. The first being rates and fees for everything but slip fees for Pillar Point Harbor, and then rates and fees for the slip of Pillar Point Harbor. That will allow Commissioner Lorenz to participate in the majority of the discussion and recuse himself from the Pillar Point discussion.
So are you asking us to divide the question, Jim? Because if you are, I can see that and I will make a motion to divide the question.
That's what I was discussing with the president, is to divide the question to enable Commissioner Lorenz to participate in a majority of the discussion.
Okay, so I'm will make a motion to divide the question in the way that in two, based on what you have just said. And so if there's a motion, I'll make that motion. And if there's a second,
I'll second that. Commissioner Lorenz, you have your hand up?
I did. I took it down because Jim Pruitt actually took the words right out of my mouth. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
sorry, are you okay with this division of the question, Commissioner Lorenz?
Yes, I
I
am.
just want to make sure, because that's what I made the motion on.
Yes.
Thank you.
Which one would we like to talk about first?
Well, we have to vote on the division of the question first. So
Okay.
why don't we do that? I'm not trying to manage the meeting, but I think that's the motion we have to dispense with first. And I don't know, there's a public comment, so I don't know if the public comment if they want to talk about dividing this question or not, but that's the motion.
And currently we have a first and a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we have public comment from John Ullum.
Who is the board president? I'm trying to figure out who the board president is, because for the last two meetings, Virginia Chain Corrali has been calling the shots. It appears that Nancy Raring has abdicated her responsibilities and really isn't even paying much attention to what's going on. I would suggest that she's acting as though she's been drinking alcohol, which I hope is not the case. Ms. Raring, you are the board president. Start paying attention. You're being made to look like a fool by Ms. Chain Corrali. She keeps interrupting you. She keeps stepping in and taking your positions and doing your job. I don't know why she feels the need to do that. I don't know why she won't let you do your work. But get your act together, President Raring. Start paying attention to the meeting. Thank you.
We have another public comment from Sabrina Brennan.
Yes, and the last speaker said similar things to my thoughts, which are it's appeared for some time that the current board president, Nancy Raring, is confused, incompetent, and incapable of running a meeting effectively. That means that then the loudest mouth in the room steps up and takes over. Of course, that's always Commissioner Virginia Chain Corrali. And so effectively, Virginia Chain Corrali manages to stay in the role of board president, regardless if she actually has that title or not. And it really makes the whole board look completely incompetent.
We have another public comment from Captain Smitty.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Captain William Smith. I'm not going to berate you on any of this. My question on this is that you're talking about raising our birth rates. Have you been living under a rock for the past couple of years? Have you seen the devastation to our businesses and the harbor, and you want to raise our birth rents here? I can barely try and survive the way I am now, and it's not very effective. So I hope that you please take that into consideration, that the commercial fishermen in this harbor are having a very difficult time, and you take that in consideration when you consider raising our birth rents. Thank you.
me. There are no further comments. Melanie, roll call, please.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Here, excuse me, yes.
President Ryrie,
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush,
Aye.
Commissioner Chang Corrali.
Aye.
The motion carries. And we move to item number 11, Pillar Point Harbor Retail Center Replacement Project Request for Proposal. John, would you like to present this item?
Wait,
We never did item 10.
right, we did, that motion was to divide the question, I think. That was my motion, was to divide the question.
Yes. All right. So that motion was to divide the question. All right, so now how do we divide this up? Which part do we take first? Do you have a preference?
President Ryring, my recommendation is you take everything but the Pillar Point slip fees. And then Commissioner Lorenz can recuse himself, and then the board can discuss the slip fees. And then after that, we'll notify Commissioner Lorenz to come back.
That sounds great. Julie, can you please present everything but the Pillar Point slip fees?
Okay, so there's 3 attachments to this staff report. The first attachment is the proposed rate and fee schedules for Pillar Point Harbor. That it also includes the slip fees in that attachment. So I guess that we would just look at all the fees minus the slip fees in attachment 1. All the rates and fees in attachment 2, and all the rates and fees in the proposed permit fee schedule. Attachment 2 is Oyster Point Marina. I haven't broken out what it would be for Pillar Point Harbor. I'm guessing about 75% of the 163,000 would be associated with the increase in the slip rentals for Pillar Point Harbor. That's an estimate. The majority of the rates and fees on the fee schedule are proposed to increase by 3.2%, except for if there was some rounding issues or for items that cannot be increased due to legal or business reasons. Staff recommends that the Harbor Commission approve the rates and fees for all but the increase in the Pillar Point Harbor District rates and fees schedule by the proposed amounts that are highlighted in red on the attachments.
So Julie, most of these look like they are very modest increases. Is there, I'm looking for the breakdown of total revenue increase.
I don't have it broken down. It's the total amount that I calculated is 163,000 if you put all of the rates and fee schedules together, but the majority of the district revenues from the rates and fee schedules does come from the berthing rates at Pillar Point Harbor. And then the second biggest would be the berthing rates at Oyster Point Marina.
Okay, thank you.
And, you know, there's like, for instance, there's an increase in acre outs of $7 up to $8. Obviously, that's more than 3.2%, but I accumulated all the previous years' percentage when that rate didn't increase. So last year it was a 5% increase. Then we skipped a year because of COVID. And then the year before that was 3.2% increase. So I used all those increases since the last time we increased the anchor out to come up with the $8 per day.
Mhm.
That's an example of how it won't exactly calculate to 3.2%.
Right.
3.2% is a fairly modest increase. The Bay Area's inflationary increase for 2021 wasn't as great as many other places in the nation. But this proposal would keep our rates up to inflation. So that would cover costs that, we have a lot of increases in our fuel costs, for example.
Mhm.
It's meant to cover our increases also.
Right. Tricia, do we need a motion to open the discussion here, or can we have a discussion then make a motion?
I think this would be a good time to take for the board members to ask questions of staff, and then you can turn it over to public comment and then take a motion on the item.
Great. All right, so board members, what are your thoughts on these increases? Commissioner Jane Crowley.
So I think given the macroeconomic situation that we're in now, I don't know. I mean, I understand the need to increase, but I just look at the trickle down effect that could be a problem for tourism and visitors. And, so I'm just putting that out there as my concern. So, I mean, but I'm want to listen to what everyone else has to say, but I don't know if I'm I'm not really for this increase right now. But I want to listen to the different viewpoints. Maybe there's somewhere in between. I mean, the 3.2% is CPI. Is that correct, Julie, for 2021?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I mean, so I just want to listen to what others have to say. I'm just thinking what the 3.2, I mean, I don't know. Even if we split it down to 1.6%, if everyone wants to be happy, I'm not going to make a motion to this effect, but I just want to look at all of our options instead of saying 3.2% automatically because of CPI, especially given the macroeconomic situation that we're in. And Jim, maybe you know the answer to this, and I think, well, how much has fuel increased at the fuel dock?
I have not looked at the fuel prices at Pillar Point, but I would assume they increased the same amount as they have on the street.
Okay, well, I know that where I've seen prices here. I mean, it's like up 20 cents week over week for like the last 2 weeks. And it's crazy. And so I just look at the cost of doing business. And again, I mean, I'm open to anything, but I don't think that having one option of just increasing to 3.2% is the only thing that we should be looking at. But, understanding what the other costs are besides the current cost of doing business with the harbor, which, I know that we need to be mindful of, but, these other ancillary costs like fuel is something I'd be paying close attention to. I know that the fuel prices there are lower than some of the other areas for cars, but I haven't seen fuel prices there in like the last few weeks. So I don't know for sure where they are based, on the fuel dock right now.
I
But
have received comments from boat operators that fuel has significantly increased and is a major expense in their operations.
Okay, thank you. I'm just putting my thoughts out there for now, but
And
would
Jim,
love to hear what others have to say.
Jim, how much fuel do we use in our operations? Because we're facing the same increases and the same cost increases that everybody else is. Like jet skis, I think they burn through fuel.
They do, and we get the fuel. We don't get our jet ski fuel from the harbor itself. So
Right, but it's not cheap anywhere.
we get it the same places that you would fill your car up. So
Yeah.
it's above $6 right now.
Yeah. Right. Commissioners, other comments? Commissioner Matoush.
Yeah, lower this. So when you look at the 3.2, our expenses at the harbor have outpaced that considerably, counting fuel and all these other things. So I'm having trouble as an enterprise district on how we'd be willing to walk away from any of these percentages and still be willing to just dive further in the hole ourselves. We do have a basic financial responsibility to the district and all the people. And therefore, I'm going to support this, as we called it, a modest increase.
Commissioner Lorenz.
Well, I'm inclined to vote not to increase this, and I'll tell you why. But first, I have a quick question for Julie, if you don't mind. Julie, was this increase included in the budget that the board approved earlier?
Yes, it was.
Okay. We're talking about an increase, if the numbers are right, of roughly, what was it, $160,000, $63,000 in revenue.
Right. So if the board decides not to vote for this increase, the final budget will take those estimates out of the budget.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Given that I appreciate your answer. Thank you. Given that the board has signed these MOUs with the city of South San Francisco, far exceeding this $163,000 in a giveaway to South San Francisco, I can't put my hand in my heart and say that I'm not going to vote. I'm going to vote to approve this because we want to be fiscally responsible. I think we are an enterprise district, but we also are responsible to our tenants to help them provide and continue to do the service that they do to our public. So this small increase, I think we can absorb that. So that's my argument. And I am going to vote not to raise the rates.
You're muted, Nancy.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner. I'll just say that I'm concerned about our district being able to remain solvent. And as I look at these increases, they seem extremely modest. The overall number, the revenue to the district is significant, but for any individual, any one of these increases is quite small, in some cases minuscule. We have public comment from John Ullum.
I'd like to comment one beforehand, just very quickly on this.
Yes.
This is going to sound like a little story, but actually it's not. It's definitely relevant. Years back, my wife and I were traveling, and we were in Latin America in some small village. And I just happened to comment to one of the locals how inexpensive the bread was. It was maybe 10 cents for a loaf of bread. And they looked at me shocked. They said that price to them was very high. And I suggest to you that maybe for some of us, the 3% increase or 3.2% increase is, as an individual, is a small number. But there are a number of people who will find that, and I think we've heard from the public already, that will find that number a significant burden. It's all a matter of perspective, especially in these times.
We have public comment, John Ullum.
Thank you, President Raring. I think I have to agree with Commissioner Lorenz. Your perspective on what is a little bit is pretty skewed. I can tell you that the price of gas has gotten so ridiculous that I no longer drive to work. I take Caltrain and ride a bicycle. I am not kidding. That is how bad it is, Nancy. I know you drive a Porsche Cayenne. I know you live in a nice ranch house with all kinds of acreage. It's so big you could make it a farm for mountain lions. but your average American does not live your lifestyle. We didn't marry well. We weren't born privileged. We didn't work as hard as you do. Whatever excuses for you have for how great you are, most of us just haven't got that. So when you sit there and say that it's a minor increase without having a clue how real people make a living, how real people work, and how hard it is to make things ends meet, you got to understand how stupid that sounds. You run an operation out at your ranch where you rent out land for people can ride their horses around. That's great. I'm glad that you have that kind of privilege. I'm glad that that kind of privilege is attainable in this country. But you are privileged, Miss Raring, and you try to keep your privilege at the expense of others. So when you talk about 3% increase being nothing, I suggest you go spend a day on a fishing boat. I expect you go to a fishing family's household. I suspect that you should try looking at the compromises they have to live with, because people like you want it all.
Captain Smitty, you have your hand raised?
Yes, again, good afternoon. This raising of our fees, you're being unrealistic as to what the expenses are for us that live off of our substance that we get from the harbor here. Yes, you've got 3% here. Our fuel costs alone have gone up almost $1 here this year. Our insurance rates are going up, and they're going to, and the insurance rates will probably go up even more with what's been going on with the unregistered vessels in the harbor. We have a lot of different expenses. I can't just go and raise my fees that I charge my passengers. I'm already struggling mightily to have my passengers come out, because their discretionary funds that they use to go fishing are now having to use to pay for fuel, for food, and other expenses. These are things that are part of our business that have to be taken into consideration. I am only one tenant in the harbor, but I know that I am not the only one that are struggling here. And this minuscule amount that you're talking about does not represent very much money for the harbor, but it does for us. These are our expenses and our overhead. This cuts into us severely. I wish you would keep that in mind when you're considering this. Thank you.
Sabrina Brennan, you have your hand raised?
Yes, I'd just like to agree with Commissioner Lorenzo's points, and also with the concerns of the Pillar Point Harbor fishing fleet. We have a commercial fishing fleet. We also have recreational fishing. And I think the board sometimes loses sight of the purpose of the district, and the district wouldn't exist if it weren't for the interests of the fishing fleet. Thanks.
Commissioner Lorenz, you have your hand up.
Oh, thank you. I'll take it down.
Julie, you have your hand up.
Yes, before we have a vote on this item, I just wanted to kind of pull out a couple items on these attachments.
Thank you.
Pillar Point Harbor and Oyster Point Marina, they have a commercial activity permit that was recommended to increase from $281 to $290. That's something I believe that the board has already approved when they were talking about the commercial activity permits for the boat offloading, and Jim Pruitt can either
confirm that.
agree or disagree. I might be incorrect on that. Also, there's a hoist fee change in here that was from 46 to 85. That's something that the Harbor Commission previously approved too. There's kind of cleanup where we don't need to separate launch ramp costs versus recreational versus commercial costs for the launch ramp. That can be all consolidated into one. And then the addition of the wharfage fee of 10 cents per pound that wasn't on the fee schedule. So if we could consider those. Oh, one other thing, live aboard permits. We eliminated the ability to get a discount for slip holders for 1 month. They got 1 month free if they paid annually up front. And we eliminated that on our last go around, but we forgot to eliminate that provision for live aboard permits, so that there is a recommendation to eliminate that for live aboard permits, that, you know, we require them to pay the 12 months.
Oh, so these are important considerations because we don't want to undo previous board decisions. So I'm wondering if we want to ask for just, you know, a report on just the new increases, right? I mean, right now, the reports that we're looking at include things that we have previously, the board has previously voted for, and then some new fees. And it's hard to separate them out just looking at this. So maybe I don't know, we can consider moving this item forward. But Commissioner Tancarelli, you have a question?
So, we're based on this division of the question, maybe this is a better question for Tricia. I mean, I kind of want to get this macroeconomic, the full picture of this. So Ed has to recuse himself on the next question, but do we have to dispense? We don't have a motion on the table right now, but is there any way that we can get a discussion going in the staff report going for the other question before we make a decision on either one of these items? Because I kind of want to get that full macroeconomic picture of the fees. Or do we have to dispense with any one of them first? Because I know Commissioner Lorenas can't participate in the second half of this question.
Right. So I think if you're going to have a discussion about the part that Commissioner Lorenas is recusing himself from, he would need to step away from that part of the discussion and not weigh in on it. So, yeah.
Right. But what I'm saying is that might affect my thinking on the overall picture. Right. And because we still would have a division of the question, we could still have two motions. But
Right.
I'm just asking if we need to have, if he needs, well, if we can do this other discussion as well, so that the other commissioners can get a broader picture from the staff.
I think then Commissioner Lorenas would need to recuse himself from
Right.
that part of the presentation.
But he can come back and vote for the other question later. He
Correct.
should be able to.
Correct.
Okay, I'm just throwing that out there just because I'm just, it's my own question.
I'm not quite sure the question there, but I just did look up how much is related to Pillar Point Harbor versus the rest of the district, if you want that figure.
Well, Tricia, let me ask you, how would that work if we do what Virginia is suggesting? What she's suggesting is that we now move into closed session and we talk about Pillar Point. Ed would have to recuse himself for, and then we come back in and vote on them one at a time, and Ed would have to recuse himself for one of the votes. So it seems kind of awkward, but what do you think?
I think what we're saying is that Ed, Virginia's suggesting that perhaps Ed would be willing to, Commissioner Lorenz would be willing to step out so that this discussion could continue related to Pillar Point Harbor. The discussion would still be an open session. And then the board could take a motion on the Pillar Point Harbor aspect of the motion. And then following that, bring Commissioner Lorenz back into the meeting and complete the discussion on the other fees and then take a motion on the other fees. I believe is how, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I think they all have to go hand in hand, but I don't want anyone to feel left out. But I would feel more comfortable understanding the whole big macro picture for all of the fees combined. I mean, it's such an odd situation to be in, but here we are.
So I'd like to weigh in on this discussion since you're using my name. I think it's fine for me to recuse myself. I've said my input with respect to these other aspects, and just covering the dock fees, which the reason for the public, the reason I'm recusing myself is I have a sailboat in the harbor and I paid fees just like everybody else to moor my boat there. And that's the only portion of this that's relevant to me. So I'm fine with leaving what I said on the table, and I can recuse myself. It's not a problem.
All right, so Commissioner Lorenz, would you like to recuse yourself? And we'll now have a discussion of the second item, which is Pillar Point Harbor fees.
That's exactly right. And if you would, Mr. Pruitt, would you just send me a text and I'll come right back when you're ready for me.
Julie, can you go ahead now with the second part of these fees that includes Pillar Point Harbor?
Okay, so Pillar Point Harbor slip fees are on page 1 of attachment 1. All of the slip fees or monthly berthing rates are recommended to be increased by 3.2%. The total amount included in the budget for those rate increases is $69,000 out from the original 163. I'm not sure if there's anything else that you would want me to explain on that.
No, so I see a 30-foot boat in dock D to H would increase by $10 a month. In dock A to C, it would increase by $11 a month. The fees increase slightly more as the size of the vessel increases. So a 65, so for instance, a 65-foot boat, the increase is $19 a month. 65 plus is $11 a foot more. Berthing, transient berthing goes up by 5 cents per foot of vessel per day.
Oh, are we talking about the transient ones too? I guess I was under the impression that we were only talking about the monthly rates.
Well, I'm just looking at the whole rate and fee schedule here.
Right, well, and
oh, transient fees we've already covered in previous motion, in a previous board decision.
well, in what we were just talking about in the rest of the item, like before Ed left the meeting, I was including everything but those monthly berthing rates. Unless there's some different direction by the board, we can split it out in a different way, but that was my assumption.
Mm-hmm.
Although we changed the way that we were going to do the slip fee increases, and we already said cost of living increase, and we've made this decision, it's already been passed. And now to formalize the budget and the introduction of those fees, we're approving them today, and this is a matter that we've already discussed in the past. And I'm not hearing any discussion of D through H. Somebody say something. Anyway, that's my recollection, that we had already set in motion this approval process for cost of living.
I still think that we should just move this forward and have a report that just lists exactly what we're looking at now and on not previous board decisions.
I'd be looking forward to just exactly what's on the report now and voting how we see the fee increases right now.
Julie, can you point those out one by one?
I guess I'm still not fully comprehending what we're doing. We've separated the question, right? And the one question, to my understanding, is that we're only going to talk about the monthly rates, the monthly berthing rates for Pillar Point Harbor. And then the rest of the rates for Pillar Point Harbor that were not the monthly berthing rates, we would discuss when Commissioner Lorenz was present. So my understanding now is we're only talking about berthing monthly rates. I
thought that Ed had to recuse himself for all of the discussion around Pillar Point Harbor rates, but I may be wrong. Am I wrong about that, Jim?
It might be, I'm not understanding. I missed that.
No, just the slip rents.
Right,
Tricia?
just the slip fees.
Just the slip fees is.
Okay, all right, okay, so we are just looking at the slip fees. All right. So board discussion on just those items.
Well, I mean, that is the reason he's had to recuse himself.
I know.
Yeah, so that's what we're talking about, is the slip fees, right?
Yeah, and if it's helpful, I can put this on the screen so everyone can see what I'm
I think that would be
talking
helpful.
about. Okay, that'll take me a second here.
Thank you.
Okay, so this section here is what we're talking about without Commissioner Lorenz being present.
Right, that's where I was reading. For a 30-foot size vessel, the increase in dock A, D to H goes from $316 to $326 a month. Dock A to C from $340 to $351, and then they're scaled all the way up. Increase based on size.
If this is the only item we're talking about, I'm going to make a motion to go ahead and do this.
Just to confirm, that's for the slip fees, correct?
Correct.
Then I'll second that motion.
All right, we have public comment. John Olam.
Thank you, President Waring. Commissioner Matoush, not since you mentioned the word enterprise district at the meeting where Virginia King Corrali's friends, Griffin Guests, were given a 5-year permit. So they stole the project or the surf contest from Jeff Clark and gang. So I was kind of glad to hear that you remember that is an enterprise district. For those of you who wonder why the district is perpetually broke, it's because people like Tom Matoush and Virginia Chan Corrali have decided that they want to gain political favor by subsidizing a marina up in South San Francisco. 30 years ago, the problems that are identified out there were identified. 30 years of the same problems, and it took staff to force you all to deal with it because Virginia Chan Corrali didn't want this coming up during her election season. Thankfully, staff remembered who it is that they work for and who have responsibility to, and they've done a great job. And yeah, Virginia's going to take credit for it, but you've done good work. I'm trying to figure out though, you keep saying that Ed needed to recuse himself because he has slip space out at the harbor. And that makes sense. But the last I remember, Commissioner Matoush had a boat out there called the Hoolie Cat, which he makes money off of. And he's not recusing himself. But you say that Ed has recused himself, but I guess Tom doesn't. That's interesting. That is interesting. Maybe someone will explain that to me. Finally, you all need to understand how most of us live in the Bay Area. We don't live on horse ranches. We don't live in West Menlo. We don't wear thousands of dollars in jewelry.
Sabrina Brennan?
Yeah, again, I'm just frustrated by the board president's lack of comprehension skills. It's really showing, it's slowing down board work, and it's causing a lot of unnecessary confusion. And I think this again points to a lack of competence. Thanks.
We have a motion and a second. Oh, Captain Smitty, I'm sorry. You have your hand up.
Yes, just for a point of clarification for the people who were ignorant of the current situation, Mr. Matoush sold his boat. He is no longer a member of the party boat row anymore. Thank you.
Okay, all right, we have a motion and a second on the table. If there's no further board discussion, we'll have roll call on that. Melanie, please. And this
Commissioner,
is a motion to increase the slip fees at Pillar Point Harbor.
President Ryring,
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush,
Aye.
Commissioner Chan Corrali,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz.
He's recused.
Oh,
So
Thank you.
that motion carries, and now we will move to the second part of this discussion and bring Commissioner Lorenz back to the meeting.
Please give me one moment.
Thanks, Jim. Welcome back, Commissioner Lorenz. We are on the part of this item that includes your participation. And I don't believe we have a motion or a second yet. But I am interested in seeing if anyone would like to make a motion to have this report revised to show the revenue increases from the things that the board has already voted on versus what the other suggested increases are, and that we look at this at a future date.
And would you want that to be brought back next month?
Yeah,
Okay.
if it's on the agenda, that would be up to Jim.
So how would
Oh.
that work, Julie?
Right, well, so I wouldn't know what to include in the budget or not to include in the budget as far as what the Harbor Commission will approve versus not approve. We can make I guess a recommendation that we would only include the rates that were approved to be increased, which is the birthing rates at this point in time. And that would be at $69,000, and then decrease the budget by the other 94,000. If that's the direction that the board wants to go in.
But Julie, things like the capital, excuse me, commercial activity permit increases that the board previously voted on, they're also included in this report. So we, just looking through here, we see a lot of redlining, but we're not actually voting on all these. I'd like to see a report that just has the increases that we will be voting on in the moment.
Well, and I can go through that. I just didn't want to make it, I didn't want the board to not vote on it and then it kind of revert back to what the fee schedule looked like without some sort of discussion. But if I can share my screen and just go through those couple items now, I think that it wouldn't take so long, and then that way we can make sure that when we adopt the budget at the next meeting that we have good numbers in there as far as what the board direction is. If that is acceptable. Okay, let me just share my screen. So the things that have already been talked about is this commercial activity report. When we implemented the offloading or the sale from the boats for the fish, we charged them $290, which was already increased by 3.2%. So if we don't change this fee schedule, then other commercial activity permits that are not for the sale off the boat will be at $281 still. That is a very minimal amount for budget purposes, probably less than $100. The other thing is this public hoist. The board already approved the $85 per hour. That was a substantial increase. That again is a very minimal amount for the overall budget. This is just cleanup here. It just consolidates these two items because the prices were the same for commercial use and recreational use. And then the only other thing that's not fee related is this live aboard permit where we were eliminating 1 month free with 1 year paid in advance discounts.
So it looks like most of what we're voting on here really is a cleanup with regard to our rates and fee schedules on things that we've already voted for.
No, most of it is the 3.2% increase, like this anchor out, birthing rate, all of the Oyster Point Marina fees that we haven't talked about, all of the event permit fees, this transient fee, most of it is increases.
But do you
I
see
just
what I'm saying?
wanted,
Do you see what I'm saying? That they're mixed. It's not even like the first page are the fees that we have not voted on and the rest of it are fees that we already have. And then there's this cleanup. It's just, it's very messy to look at and try to understand what are the actual fees we are voting to increase now? What are the fees we've already increased and we're just voting to clean up our schedule? I don't know, maybe other people don't feel this way, but I feel like I'm struggling to understand exactly which fees we're looking at today and which we aren't, even though you just went over them, Julie. I mean, I can follow them when you're doing it. And then Commissioner Matoush.
And to check to see if I was on mute or not. I believe that we already eliminated the 1 month with 12. So that's nothing new to consider now, because I know that was eliminated 1 or 2 years ago.
Which item?
The 1 month free by paying 12 in advance.
Right, right.
yeah, we failed to do this. So liveaboards have been getting 1 month free.
Okay, got it. Now I understand.
So a lot of this is just little cleanup, but I mean, we're having to go through this item by item.
I'd like to motion to approve the entire document and all the fees and increases that are listed.
I will second that. Commissioner Chen Crawley, you have your hand up.
So, like I said, I have a problem with not so much that, we're not increasing or increasing, but I do think that looking at this macroeconomic situation, we've done these other fee adjustments. I don't know, this is an increase based on CPI, right? And this 3.2% is just something that if we can not do it at this point, that would be my thought. The other thought is, we could figure out if there's a fee increase in between, but I don't know. I just think that at this time, it's the wrong time to do this fee increase for the businesses.
Commissioner Chen Crawley, so can you tell me exactly, I'm online looking at the report itself, the rates and fee schedule. Can you help me understand exactly which fees you object to?
Well, basically, we've increased different things over the year. That's why you were asking for a separation of what has been done and what hasn't been done, right? And this 3.2% increase is another increase. So that's all I'm saying. And Julie confirmed that the 3.2% increase is an increase overall. And it's not just what we're voting on in this document. I mean, this is a CPI increase. And I understand why you would want that, but I just think since we've increased the other areas that we've approved, we may not need to do the 3.2% unless I'm misunderstanding Julie. But to me, it was an overall everything 3.2% increase for the CPI costs or for CPI.
Right, except for those items that I pointed out.
Yeah, I get it. But yeah.
Right, so the whole fee schedule was recommended to be increased by 3.2%.
So can you give me an example of something on this report that you?
But it's just just increasing anything right now. for that would harm, for me, that would harm the businesses right now when we need to promote this economic development. That's how I'm looking at it. How do we bring in revenues? We have to, I think, make sure that our businesses succeed so that we succeed. That's all I'm saying. But I mean, I'm open to hearing any other viewpoints. This is just my concern, which is very consistent with, trying to make sure we balance the need for adjusting for our expenses, but also making sure that our businesses can thrive in the best way possible.
Well, you're aware that we have extraordinary budget shortfalls.
Yeah.
And we are facing the same economic pressures that everybody else is. And we're trying to run safety operations out of our harbor and provide safe infrastructure for everyone.
And just to clarify, we would only increase the monthly berthing rates for Pillar Point Harbor and potentially none of the other fees.
Well, we just voted on the berthing rates.
Yeah, so that would be the only thing that would increase if the vote is that we don't increase any of the other fees.
Well, we voted on the berthing rates to be increased, but you're saying overall for this particular motion, the whole thing would be a 3.2% increase. I mean, for the things that you didn't touch on.
There would not be an additional 3.2% increase on, for instance, commercial activity permits. Just voted.
I know that's what she was, that's what Julie
Right.
said. The things that she touched on.
So things like visiting boats wouldn't get an increase,
Right, so
or
that's hurting our
the anchor out people wouldn't get an increase, or the launch ramp fee wouldn't increase. So we're talking about not increasing fees. The passenger service fee wouldn't get an increase.
See? So
I know, that's what I'm saying.
We're not increasing our business fees to our businesses.
Yeah, the other fees aren't really for businesses per se.
Commissioner
Except
Lorraine,
for maybe the passenger service fee from 253 to 261.
So
I'm just trying to, put a little bit more detail in here, because I know I'm probably confusing the issue.
I mean, I think if there's something specifically that you want to call out that you think is harming one of our businesses, and we discuss that, we should discuss that. But I think overall, these are fees that are not touching our businesses. Commissioner Lorenz, you have your hand up?
No.
No? Commissioner Matoush.
What about the slip fees at South San Francisco?
Yeah, should we take care of those now? So that's on Julie's report, attachment number 2.
But I'm just making sure that we don't leave this topic and leave some fees that could be addressed unaddressed.
Well, since we've just addressed, while Commissioner Lorenz had to recuse himself, we just addressed the fees at Pillar Point, berthing rates. And so now maybe the most logical thing to do is look at Oyster Point Marina berthing rates by themselves and then move forward.
But do we have, isn't that in Julie's report? So we could have just what's listed in the report and complete the report. I believe there's a motion and a second on the floor to approve the document as written.
Yes, there is. We can take a vote on that. All right, well, so let's see how we come down on this. We do have a motion and a second to accept this fee schedule rate increase. And I believe we've already taken, no, we haven't taken public comment on Oyster Point yet. Sabrina Brennan.
You mean Pillar Point?
Oyster Point.
We haven't taken public comment at all,
Yes, we have.
not on this issue. I mean, not on this particular issue. On the first question we did, but not on this one. To my, unless I missed it.
Well, let's see, when we started this discussion, we were discussing overall fees that excluded Oyster Point. And then that excluded Pillar Point. And then we did have public comment on that. And then we moved, Commissioner Lorenz recused himself, and we moved to a discussion just of Pillar Point berthing fees. And we had a vote on that. And now we're back to discussing Oyster Point.
Unknown caller.
So Tricia, what's your call on this? Have we already taken public comment on this item or not?
I believe you took public comment on generally all fees excluding Pillar Point berthing. And then we decided to, I don't know that you completed that item, and then you moved to just Pillar Point berthing fees. You took public comment and completed that, and now we're back. And so you began public comment. I don't know that you completed public comment. So you may just want to give the public an opportunity, since this motion's kind of been moving a little bit. I think it would be helpful just to start over with public comment for this item. And that way you can be assured everybody had an opportunity to comment.
That's fine. I recognized Sabrina Brennan.
Thank you. I was just unmuted. So I'm going to score this board, the San Mateo County Harbor Commission majority, an F for failure. There has been an absurd amount of unnecessary confusion during this agenda item and previous agenda items. It's apparent that the board is not doing their homework in general and has not bothered to contact staff to sort out questions in advance of the meeting. Probably didn't even read the board packet from the sounds of it. There's a lack of comprehension, and I am very concerned about the board president's completely inappropriate berating of staff.
We have a second public comment, John Ullum.
This is kind of funny, folks. I left the meeting for 15 minutes so I could go jump on the train, because it's louder than heck when you do that. I come back and you're still talking about it. And in fact, you've confused things so thoroughly. Your lawyer does not know where you are at in the conversation and decided just to be safe and do it over. Ms. Corrali, I do not like your politics. I think you're rather a mean, shallow person. But please, I much prefer you in charge. Nancy, would you just resign and put Virginia in charge? You'll get the results you want. The meetings will go much smoother. Virginia knows how to run a meeting at least. She pays attention to what's going on. It's obvious to me that you don't have a clue what this meeting is about, what this topic is about, where you are in this topic, what you even said about the topic. This is just a sign of just how badly this commission is being run since Virginia and Tom conspired to hijack the whole commission for the benefit of South San Francisco. You wouldn't be having such a detailed discussion if you weren't subsidizing South San Francisco to the tune of $1 million a year. That's right, Tom. Your enterprise district, the one that's supposed to do things and make money, pay for its way, subsidizes another agency's infrastructure to the tune of $1 million a year just to run it. We're not talking about the millions of dollars in subsidies that you've committed to that you can't afford to build new infrastructure out there. And that's totally on Tom and Virginia. So go ahead, Nancy, cut me off.
Captain Smitty, you have your hand raised.
Yes, again, good afternoon. I'm not here to berate anyone here. I'm here to address a comment that was made about fees for business in our harbor, fees for these were not being raised for businesses. I have a business in this harbor. This is going to raise my fees, my passenger ticket fees, and the berth rent. These are fees that will be raised for your businesses in the harbor. And again, I strongly recommend voting to not raise our rates. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands raised, so we have a motion and a second. If there's no more discussion, we'll take a vote. Melanie, roll call.
Commissioner Mathush,
Aye.
Commissioner Chang Crowley,
Nay.
Commissioner Lorenz, Commissioner
No.
Oh,
Sorry, I was muted.
President Riley. President Riley,
Aye. Commissioner Chang Crowley, I didn't hear your vote.
I voted no.
So, board discussion about where to go from here.
Julie? If we were, I'm trying to, I understand the need to, to deal with the CPI, but is there any way, I mean, do we have numbers on if we were to meet this halfway into a 1.6% increase? I mean, probably it's so minimal, it may not even matter. But again, I just didn't like the fact that we didn't even have these options. But maybe that's because we were we need to discuss this at the board level. So that's why I'm bringing it up. And I mean, maybe we can bring this back next month. I mean, it's.
Yeah, well, and just to summarize, we've already increased the Pillar Point Harbor's berth rents by 3.2%.
It's very different. My rationale is very different for that versus this with the businesses.
Well, and so we're talking about not increasing Oyster Point Marina's fees or any of the special event fees or any of the other Pillar Point Harbor fees at this particular time, or we increase them by 1.6%, or we do a hybrid, some of them get increased by 3.2 and other ones get 1.6. We can basically do whatever the board directs us to do in those aspects. This fee schedule as approved right now would come into effect on July 1st. So there might be a potential that we would have to postpone that effective date also. Yeah, and we can do mid-year budget adjustments based on the direction of the board. We can table this for a month or 2 months or whatever the direction is. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities here.
Yeah, I would just want something, a report that's a little more comprehensive with more options. That's all I'm asking for.
President Ryring,
Yes.
well, my recommendation is that the board separate the question for slip fees and Oyster Point, and that decision's already been made for Pillar Point. And then for the vote, the board is tied on accepting the package as drafted. We will readdress all other fees and give options to the board that they can consider and spell that out and bring it back to the board on June 15th.
And if we need it before then, can we call a special meeting just to deal with the budget issues? Because this would be before the final budget approval.
We can have it anytime President Ryring would like to call a special meeting. And as right now, my recommendation to Julie will be develop the budget as if only the slip fees have passed for Pillar Point and Oyster Point if the board decides to follow suit, and not include the increased fees for other items that the board will be considering on the next board meeting.
Okay, I think we probably need to put it off at a time that we know all the commissioners are going to be available, because we are coming into the summer vacation. So we can find a date that works. All right, do I have a motion to that effect?
For what, putting it off until, I mean,
Yes.
if we can, I would want to do something as soon as possible before the
Well-
fiscal year end. So this is the mid-May. I don't know. I mean, Memorial Day is coming up.
President Ryring, I believe I have enough direction to prepare a new report, and I can work with the commissioners one-on-one on availability of dates and provide you that if in that you want to call a special meeting or not before the.
That's great. Thank you, Jim. I move that
And procedurally, I don't think we need to vote on anything. The board's already voted, and it's 2-2 on the overall package. But I do recommend the board do a separate motion for Oyster Point on increasing or not increasing the slip fees.
And so I agree with that, Jim. In fact, I thought that's what we were doing. So if I were a little confused on that, I'm sorry. I thought we were dispensing with Pillow Point before we even get to Oyster Point.
well, we just, all right, so the motion that we had was to increase the fees across the board. Does somebody want to make a motion just about the slip fees?
I'll move to just do the slip fees at Oyster Point.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Melanie, roll call, please.
Commissioner Chan Crowley,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Yes.
President Ryring,
Aye.
Commissioner Mateusz.
Aye.
Great, that motion carries. And Tricia, do we need a motion to move the rest of this discussion forward to a date to be determined?
No.
We don't. All right, so then we're just going to move on. Yeah? All right, the next item on the agenda, thank you everyone, is item number 11. Pillar Point Harbor Retail Center Replacement Project Request for Proposal. John, would you like to present this item?
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a recommended motion. The motion reads, pursuant to a publicly advertised request for proposal, authorize the general manager to enter into an agreement with the preferred firm, Boring and Straja Architects, for architectural design, engineering, permitting, and construction support for the Pillar Point Harbor Retail Center Replacement Project for an amount not to exceed $541,244, with a 10% contingency in the event there is a need for change orders due to unforeseen challenges, and authorize the general manager to issue change orders up to the contingency amount and approve an increase in capital expenditure appropriations of $595,368.40 to be funded by available working capital. The current Pillar Point Harbor Retail Center building is over 50 years old and has many challenges. It's in need of complete replacement or full remodel for adaptive reuse. At board direction, staff publicly advertised a request for proposal, which included a requirement for significant public stakeholder outreach, workshop meetings, during which Pillar Point Harbor users input which direction to go will be gathered. During the initial evaluation, a recommendation will be made on whether to demo the existing building and completely replace it, construct a new building at a different site within Pillar Point Harbor, or completely remodel for adaptive reuse. The requested professional services include all aspects of project architectural, design, engineering, public outreach, and construction support, including an initial review and assessment of potential project design and location alternatives at a conceptual level, supporting the permitting process, preparation of 100% technical specifications, and supporting the bid process for selecting a contractor to carry out construction. The robust public outreach will consist of meetings with stakeholders, workshops, and updates at board meetings for to gather direction from the board. Impact to our existing tenants will be very seriously considered in the planning process. 6 firms responded to the RFP, and in accordance with the RFP terms, the San Mateo County Harbor District's Evaluation Committee thoroughly reviewed the responses, conducted interviews, checked references, and found the firm Goring Straja Architects to best meet the district's needs for this particular project. After completing the comparative analysis and determining Goring Straja to be best to meet the district's needs for this particular project, Goring Straja's bid form was considered, and the bid price of $541,244 was determined reasonable for this project scope. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the aforementioned motion. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, board discussion.
I'd like to approve the motion as read.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have public comments. Sabrina Brennan.
Yeah, thank you. So the district has some very significant financial problems, which we've heard about this year at your meetings. And there is a need to cut spending. So far, we haven't heard anything about the district taking action to discontinue the waste of public funds at Oyster Point Marina, which is a facility that the district does not own. This needs to be dealt with. The district can't afford to continually take on costs for major capital improvement projects without reducing waste and allowing the city of South San Francisco to operate the facility that they own. I'd also like to mention that sea level rise is a huge factor when considering a project like this, and it does not make sense to rebuild in the same location, given the fact that sea level rise is going to inundate that area. It's in the mapping. So there's going to need to be a lot of changes made to address sea level rise and the future of Pillar Point Harbor. Based on what I know, the district has not done really comprehensive studies of the impacts of sea level rise on the facility at Pillar Point. That needs to happen to maintain the facility. Thanks.
Dan Hegarty, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. So I just learned about this. I knew that there was plans in the past about adding bathrooms, but to demolish the whole retail center, absolutely not, in my opinion. That Catch Joanne restaurant right there, the way it's uniquely designed interior, the atmosphere that they have, is just really a jewel of the coast side. We lost the 3-0 Cafe, and there's not many original nice little places. I would say that the way it is now is really the real draw of the visitors. They love that. I've talked to numerous people while I'm, eating there, and they just love the way it is now. So any idea of upgrading maybe the exterior, the facade, the decor, and some minor remodeling, but to lose that Catch Joanne the way it is now, man, that would be devastating for the harbor and all of the coast side. I've been here for 34 years, and I've been going to that place. I remember when they had music on Friday and Saturday nights. Yes, so I'm following this closely and giving input whenever I can. But please do not demolish Catch Joanne restaurant. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Did I already take John Ullum? No?
No.
John Ullum.
This meeting just gets better and better. I mean, to tell you this way it's being professionally ran. Folks, something you might want to know is that the only reason this is on the agenda because staff had the guts to force you to deal with it. As all of you know, this was not on anybody's master plan or attempt to do anything until staff forced you to admit that you guys were spending your money inappropriately and allowing the infrastructure to deteriorate to nothing, to just crud or crap, as Nancy would put it. Nancy, something you might find interesting about this is probably the main motivator, the one that really started the whole issue, was an ADA lawsuit that was filed. Catch Joanne was involved. A gentleman, there's just no bathroom access for handicapped individuals out there. And Nancy, this is what you will take to heart. There were many people who referred to as the ADA supporters, referred to them as Nazis. Yep, they were talking about wheelchair Nazis because people in wheelchairs and ADA and who needed the advantages guaranteed by the ADA Act, we're asking that their rights be observed, that the law be followed. And they were called Nazis. Nancy, can you imagine such a thing? As someone referring to advocates for handicapped individuals as being Nazis because of something that they said or supposedly did, or because they insulted you on Twitter. So think about what you're doing and know what the reasons are. Know that Virginia is going to get the credit for it. She's been considered an out-of-the-box thinker. She's real brave, takes on these kinds of things. But staff is the only reason.
So we have a motion and a second on this item, and let's have board discussion.
Nancy,
Yeah,
I've,
Commissioner Jane Crawley, go ahead.
yes, so this is a question for staff. I am kind of sympathetic to what one of the members of the public mentioned about character of, some of these institutions. And I know that we're going to engage the retailers there, they're the tenants and they do bring in revenue for the Harbor District. Have you talked to any of them yet, Jim? I mean, I don't see that I see that I don't see this in the report. And I think you may have mentioned that you would be talking to them.
Yes, I've engaged all the retailers in the current building and discussed the possibility of a new building, stressing that we did not want to interfere with their current businesses and operations. And the choice of the building has not been selected. What we're going to do has not been selected, and how we do it has not been selected. All that's going to be developed during the design and engineering phase, which we will have seek public comment and have workshops on that. And working very closely and with them on if we do build a new building, what they want to see in that building. Because it's our hope right now that we can work with them and move their lease to the new spaces. And we can have part of the whole character of the new building is to fit in with Pillar Point and with the surrounding area to reflect the atmosphere of Pillar Point, as opposed to a glass building that does not reflect the atmosphere and the character of Pillar Point Harbor.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Lorenz?
Yes, a couple of things. First, I'd like to agree with Dan Haggerty that I, for one, like the old school design of that building, but there's lots of reasons to renovate it, which is why we need to talk about this. I'm happy to see that the plan is to get input from both the tenants and the public. I think anything we do with respect to buildings in the harbor needs input from all folks, especially the stakeholders, which is our local public, but also the folks that drive over the hill to come to visit the harbor. And I'm hopeful that and this is a question for Jim, I think it is the case, we're approving this architectural firm. They will be doing the public outreach. Is that the case?
I'll speak to that, Commissioner Lorenz, and just
Hi, John.
to say that the committee, the selection committee, put a very strong emphasis on the design engineering firms that did provide proposals on which would and had the most experience at gathering public input. And I'm happy to say that Goring Straja has extensive experience in that field. And we did put a lot of emphasis on initial discussion with the stakeholders, with the actual retail restaurant owners, and involving the public in multiple outreach workshop charrettes to try to determine what would be the best way to move forward.
Thank you, John. So I think what you're saying is that I don't have to be too worried about it, but thank you. As you can tell, the public's very interested in this. I'm hoping that there'll be an opportunity for the architects to discuss with us and the public their approach to one of the members of the public asked about sea level rise, how that fits in with our plan with respect to these buildings.
Yes, addressing the sea level rise and taking into consideration the sea level rise resilience studies that have already been conducted at Pillar Point. Mm-hmm. And as our former Commissioner Brennan brought up earlier, the importance of addressing sea level rise was another very large factor that was considered when choosing Goring Straja. I think we all appreciate the unique atmosphere of the current building, but of course we do need to consider future sea level rise challenges. So one option that's already been initially discussed would be potentially moving the building to the upper lot. But again, there's other ways to remediate the challenges and potentially, as I said earlier in my little summary, doing a complete remodel for adaptive reuse and mitigating for future sea level rise.
Great, thank you. I think it needs to be done, and I have full faith in staff's work, so appreciate it. Thanks.
Do we have a motion to enter into an agreement with the preferred firm?
I had
We have
support-
one, right? We have
Yeah.
one on the table.
Yes,
Oh, we have the motion in a second.
we got a motion.
Oh, yeah, we did. Commissioner Matthews, you made the motion and Commissioner.
And I
Chang-
second it, yeah.
Great. All right, if there's no further discussion, roll call, Melanie.
Commissioner Lorenz? Commissioner Lorenz? I can't hear you.
I can barely hear what's going on.
I can't hear
Yeah.
anything.
Really?
hear
Really,
you.
yeah.
I can hear you guys.
Can't hear you.
Oh, that's
Barely.
really weird. Okay, can you hear me now?
Barely,
Yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead.
That's
Roll
better.
call.
yeah.
that's odd.
That's it. Good. Now
That's
we're-
it.
Okay.
Good.
Well, okay. Sorry, we must be having some connection problems here. Commissioner Lorenz,
Aye.
President Ryring,
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush,
Aye,
Commissioner Chan-Carali.
Aye.
That motion carries. We'll move on to item number 12, Pillar Point Harbor Johnson Pier Expansion Dock Replacement Project. John, this is your item again.
Yes, Commissioners, this is a motion to approve the third change order to amend the ongoing Pillar Point Harbor Johnson Pier Expansion and Dock Replacement Project Design Engineering Professional Services Agreement with Moffett and Nickel for an additional amount of $97,200 to include additional design, engineering, and permitting for increased electrical capabilities at the pier terminus to meet the operational needs of the fish buyers and to repair pier crossmember beam pilings. In March of 2019, the district entered into a professional service agreement with Moffett and Nickel for design engineering permitting efforts to widen the Johnson Pier terminus and replace the docks at Pillar Point Harbor. The district has now requested Moffett and Nickel to provide a two-part change order, number 3, to this professional services agreement, which is under consideration today. Task 1, the 3 district fish buyers, the tenants at the terminus, have initiated use of machinery which require more electricity than is currently available. The fish buyers have had to utilize large rented trailered generators, which take up precious, already very limited space at the terminus. This problem has been particularly acute during very busy fishing seasons for squid. Moffett and Nickel's change order amendment being considered today includes $72,700 for design engineering permitting, creating technical specifications for a construction invitation for bid and construction support to effect these electrical upgrades. And then task number 2, the district enlisted the assistance of Dudek to work on an overall master plan for the district. Part of the master plan included a May 2021 Pillar Point Harbor updated marina facility condition survey report. This condition survey revealed possible damage to some of the Johnson Pier crossmember beams underneath the pier itself, out at the end near the terminus. Subsequently, the district approved change order number 1 to the existing Moffett and Nickel professional service agreement, so Moffett and Nickel could conduct a more thorough examination of these pilings and crossmembers. After an in-depth inspection and core sampling of the Johnson Pier underdeck structure to examine the reported damage, Moffett and Nickel determined the previously reported damage was superficial, not structural, but was in need of repair to prevent any future damage from concrete spalling. The corrosion at this time is minor, and repairs could be performed without having to install new reinforcing steel. If repairs are delayed, the corrective action would likely require replacement of the reinforcing steel, which significantly is more costly. Moffett Nickel's change order amendment proposal includes $24,500 for design engineering permitting, creating technical specifications for construction invitation for bid and construction support to effect this repair. The combined total for the above two tasks is $97,200 for the design engineering, permitting, and construction support. This additional change order amendment amount will bring the new total of the Moffatt Nickel professional service agreement to $1,755,400. Therefore, staff recommends the board approve the aforementioned motion. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. Any board discussion, or do I have a motion on this?
Motion to approve.
I'll
Second.
All right, Commissioner Chen Crowley seconds. Any discussion? If not, there's no public hand raised. So Melanie, roll call. Oh, no, I see Commissioner Lorenz raised your hand.
All right, it's a little slow. I just want to point out that this is good work by staff to get this on the agenda and moving. We really do need to do this, and since we're not looking at doing a major pier renovation anytime soon because we don't have the funds to do it, as we found out in our last meeting. So I'm more than support this and hopeful that we can get it done quickly.
Great. So roll call, Melanie, please.
President Ryring,
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen Crowley,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz.
Bye.
That motion carries, and we move to item number 13, commercial activity permit for Coastal Cruises LLC. Jim, can you please present this item?
You should see on top of your desktop slide that says San Mateo County Harbor District, May 25th, 2022, item
Yeah.
11. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Good afternoon, President Ryring, commissioners, members of the public. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this topic and present it to the board. Get it to work. This item 11 is a consideration of a commercial activity permit for Coastal Cruise LLC to operate an e-bike rental business at Pillar Point Harbor. And again, I want to stress it's just the commercial activity permit. It's not the speed limits or the type of bikes that the rental shop would rent, but the ability to operate a business. Staff's recommendation is to approve a commercial activity permit for Coastal Cruise LLC to operate a commercial e-bike rental business from Pillar Point Harbor and authorize the general manager to take the necessary steps to issue said permit. The background and history, staff received a briefing from Coastal Cruise back in March and then recommended that we present that to the full board, which we did on March 16th, seeking direction for the board if we should even continue to consider e-bike rentals from the harbor. And the board directed us to go further research and come back to the board with a recommendation. Further, Half Moon Bay staff report concerning the e-bikes from the May 17th board meeting was forwarded to the commissioners for their information. Also, you can find that Half Moon Bay staff report on e-bikes on their website and their consideration of e-bikes on their portion of the coastal trail. Coastal Trails is intending to operate out of a converted 20-foot container, shipping container, examples of which are on your screen now, and would power it by solar power. It will not be connected to any utilities to include electricity or water. The location in which staff is recommending they be placed is on the upper level of Perch Beach, which right now is indicated on your screen with the blue circle. That area is leveled off and is above and to the south of Half Moon Bay Kayak Company. The model of bike that they plan to use is an electric bike company bike, Model E, that has a max speed unrestricted to 25 miles an hour, 1,000 watts, and a range of up to 70 miles with a maximum load of 350 pounds. The electric bike Model E speed can be limited through a user interface. So Coastal Cruiser can limit the speed of the bike. If it's limited to less than or more than 20 miles an hour, it'll be a class 3 bike. And if it's less than 20 miles an hour, it could be either a class 2 or 1 or 2, depending on if the throttle is installed. To start out under California law, class 3 e-bikes are not permitted on any trail unless specifically authorized by ordinance by the governmental agency having authority over the trail. We have not passed an ordinance for a class 3 bike on any of our trails within the jurisdiction of the Harbor District. Class 1 and 2 bikes, on the other hand, are permitted on bike paths and trails unless specifically prohibited by ordinance of the governing body. So right now, class 1 and 2 e-bikes are authorized on the coastal trail in accordance with California state law. If we would like to limit that, we'd have to pass an ordinance. Coastal Cruise intends to limit the max speed of their bikes to 15 miles an hour. It'll be classified as a class 2 unless the throttle is removed. After talking to Coastal Cruise yesterday and today, they have agreed that if it is restricted to class 1, they can remove that throttle. And like I said, class 1 and 2 e-bikes are permitted by state law to operate on bicycle paths. E-bikes on the coastal trail. During the March meeting, commissioners asked about the coastal trail and what impact this business would have on them, or even if the bikes were allowed. Jurisdiction of the coastal trail between us and the hotel south of Half Moon Bay is controlled by the state of California in sections, San Mateo County in sections, Half Moon Bay in sections, and then the Harbor District in sections. California, back in 2021, late 2021, published their policy on e-bikes on their trails. And California has limited the coastal trail to class 1 e-bikes only. And that picture on the right is a sign that is posted at Venice Beach at the trail entrance, at the road at the Venice Beach entrance. So only class 1 bikes are allowed on the coastal trail under state jurisdiction, which is a lot of the coastal trail. San Mateo County does not have any prohibition yet. So 1 and 2 bikes are allowed on their section, but they are currently working on a policy for e-bikes, and I expect them to follow suit with the state with class 1 e-bikes. Half Moon Bay, as I discussed, has no prohibition. So class 1 and 2 e-bikes are allowed on the coastal trail under Half Moon Bay's area right now, but that is subject to change. They are currently working on ordinance changes to more than likely follow the state and also implements speed limits on the coastal trail under their section. And as I said, San Mateo County Harbor District does not have any prohibitions. So staff will be coming to the board in a future date recommending class 1 only on the coastal trail, and also some speed limits, such as 5 miles an hour at the S curves at the new RV park restroom and green space project. So bottom line is class 1 e-bikes are allowed, and Coastal Cruise said they would voluntarily reduce their bikes that they rent for use on the coastal trail to the class 1s by not installing the throttle. And it's staff's recommendation, not to repeat the entire staff report, is to approve the commercial activity permit for Coastal Cruise LLC to operate a commercial e-bike rental business from Pillar Point Harbor and authorize the general manager to take the necessary steps to issue said permit. That's my report and standing by for any questions.
Thank you, Jim. Board discussion on this item?
I'd like to approve the permit or move ahead to approve it as written.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Dan Haggerty has his hand up.
Yes, thank you, commissioners. So, I got to start out by saying, my whole life, I've been involved with bicycles. I'm an avid bicycle fan. I have, I think, 5 of them. With regards to renting e-bikes out of the harbor, I just have to say, not yet. Your district is going to walk into many, many unexpected problems regarding safety. You're basically putting the cart before the horse by not having a very clear, this whole industry, this whole culture just hasn't had time yet to figure out safety with electric bicycles. We now have electric skateboards and the one wheels, and you've got all these different electric powered movements. There is most people that I have experienced just don't yet have the education or respectfulness to pass pedestrians closely, slowly and safely. So I want to say, it's a good maybe idea of the future, but it's cart before the horse. You're going to have a lot of safety problems. You're going to have a lot of injuries. So you really need to do your homework first. Set up clear, safe rules that have been proven to be effective, and that everybody recognizes them and honors these rules. But right now they're not honoring them.
Commissioner Lorenz, you have your hand up.
I do. I have to say, I do agree with Dan Haggerty, the person that just spoke. There very likely will be a demand on how to control e-bike access, but not just bikes. We do have an increasing number of human-powered land vehicles running through the district property as it stands. So I've done a little bit of research on all of this, and I've come to the conclusion that e-bikes are here to stay, whether we like them or not. And facilitating a rental on our property, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think staff did a good job giving us some information. And I was very happy to see, and Jim pointed this out, that we have the ability to regulate bicycles in general, but e-bikes in particular, on our district property. So we have the ability to at least control some aspect of their use, whether they're rented or not. As Dan pointed out, I think we do have an issue that should come before the board at some point, and that is how to control or make public safety consideration in the planning that we do for our harbor. We right now, at any given weekend, you have skateboard, bicycles, e-bikes, all kinds of ways of transporting a human crisscrossing our parking lot. And as someone who drives through there regularly, I have to say it's quite a thing to navigate. So I'm for this, but I would like to see a discussion in the future, probably the near future, once we get this going, on how we're going to manage not just e-bikes, but traffic through our property. And I also have another concern. If you look at the area where folks are planning to put this converted container, it's close to an area that's not seeing a lot of public traffic, and it's now what I'm talking about is the area to the south of the lot of Perch Beach. That's a wetlands now. Migratory birds use it extensively, especially in the fall. We already have problems with folks coming from renting rental kayaks and SUPs, disturbing wildlife at the southern portion of that inner harbor. I'd like to see some measure of control, and especially would discourage any idea of parking automobiles in that flat area. So if that's a consideration, I will vehemently work against it. But I definitely think that there has to be a plan on where that building is going to be and some measure of control over where the public can take those bikes. You're muted.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commission? We have a public comment from Sabrina Brennan.
Yeah, I'm speaking on behalf of the Coastside Bicycle Coalition. If you look at the Half Moon Bay review this week, you'll see there's an article on the city council's consideration of e-bikes. And I actually think this agenda item should have been put on for a meeting after the city council makes a decision on e-bikes, because it directly relates to Pillar Point Harbor and use of the California Coastal Trail that obviously connects all the way to Half Moon Bay and beyond in either direction. There are 3 different types or classes of e-bikes, and in the current setup with the coastal trail, we just don't have a wide enough trail to accommodate a lot of additional bike traffic. And that's really unfortunate. I think there needs to be a focus on improving the coastal trail segment throughout the coast side. And since you are the harbor district, your job is to improve the coastal trail segment through Pillar Point Harbor. And that hasn't happened. I've been harping on this since before I was elected to the Harbor Commission. Nothing's been done about it. There's been delay after delay. We need to reconfigure the access on the coastal trail and make it safe for bicycles, pedestrians, e-bikes, and other types of vehicles that are currently using the trail. So talk to Half Moon Bay, think carefully about this. There could be a terrible accident. It needs to be a thoughtful, well-considered decision.
No further public comment that I see. We have a motion and a second on the table. If there's no, oh, Commissioner Lorenz, you have your hand up.
Yes. I would prefer to delay a vote on this where we can have a discussion on the location of this site for the reasons I stated, and also at least some idea of what a future plan for traffic with these bikes, as Commissioner Brent or ex-Commissioner Brennan pointed out, because we do need to at least consider that.
Commissioner Lorenz, if I can address you with the permission of President Ryring.
Of course.
I concur with you on the safety of the wetlands there, and the patch is big enough where they'll be up towards the front of it, as opposed to the back corner where that issues are, or that wetland is, because the protection of that wetlands also one of my top priorities personally, and a top priority for the district, as you know. With respect to the coastal trail, a contract amendment has been issued to redesign the coastal trail that's coming down from the boat launch ramp through Pillar Point Harbor and beyond. And we plan on protecting that area in the design of that trail once the initial designs come out, which could include some kind of barrier to prevent people from walking through that habitat. And they can only come in through the front of the trailer area. With respect to parking, cars will not be allowed to park up there at all. And that's the rule now, and that's the rule we'll continue to implement. And the Harbor District is, as we all know, a significant entry to the trail. A large number of the vehicles that park at Pillar Point Harbor are trail users and immediately get on their bikes and ride out of the harbor and follow the coastal trail. So that's also a consideration. And finally, the company Coastal Cruise intends to and will, as part of their CAP, give a safety brief and an educational brief to every rider that they rent to, which includes trail etiquette, wildlife preservation, and preservation of the environment, which the state park is working real hard on right now with removing invasive species and blocking some access to some areas while those native species get a foothold again. And the city, talking with the city, they're in watching all the videos and the subcommittees. They're looking into the same kind of restrictions with respect to speed limits and more than likely limiting it to Class 1 like the state has to keep it uniform throughout the entire coast side. And then the state, I have calls into them and we'll be coordinating with them too. They actually called me back in the middle of the meeting where I couldn't take their phone call, but I will call them. And the county is working on amendments too. So we are working in tandem with all the other stakeholders in this. But again, this is just respect to the issuing of a commercial activity permit for this company to start getting the required permits they need. I don't see them operational for several months because they have to go through that. And then we also have to take a look at the coastal trail and decide what the district wants to do with respect to speed limits through the harbor and on the trail and on the S-curves up at the Surfers Beach restroom project, because all the different areas will require a different speed limit, I would imagine, and limited to Class 1 on, my recommendation is going to be limited to Class 1 on coastal trail, same as the state, but the West Trail is much wider and Class 1 or 2 or possibly 3 out there on the West Trail. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
President Rehring?
Commissioner Chen Crawley.
Yeah, Jim, just a quick question. I mean, there's gonna be signage. Is there, I mean, can we kind of mention what the penalties are for something like for these violations? Maybe that could be a deterrent. I mean, I don't know what they are.
For the Harbor District, it'll be a very small penalty because we don't have the bail schedule for those, but we will do our best to enforce it. And this is not just for the Harbor District, the county, the state, and the city. All of us are talking about the challenges of enforcement and the need to really educate and depend on the public and the users of the trail to follow the rules. Now, we could paint, we could put on the pavement different color paint in areas where they need to go extremely slow and use grit paint so they don't slip. And we can put up signs that the certain speed limits or caution signs up on the trail on why they need to go that slow. And I've been walking the trail for 2 years now, and I have to say a majority of the people follow etiquette. There are a few that don't, and but I think you're going to get that anywhere you go. Our hope is that the majority of the people will follow the rules and force others who do not to follow those rules.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lorenz and Commissioner Chen Carl, you both still have your hands up. Do you have further comments, or do we want to take roll call on this?
I'd just like to comment on my vote. I'm going to vote no, because I think we still need to do a little more planning on this. I think there are a lot of issues coming up, and it also sounds like there's work in progress already happening. I realize that it's just a permit, but it's not fair to the applicants to say, well, we're going to give you a permit and then tell them later that they can't put the structure down. I just thought I'd let you all know why I'm going to vote no.
So you think it's premature because why?
Well, I can list them. Number one, I agree with Dan. It's while e-bikes are here to stay, it's just a little bit early to issue or to start e-bike rental on our property. The City of Half Moon Bay hasn't yet made their decision on how to restrict e-bikes on their properties and trails. We haven't thought out a plan even for regular bicycle traffic throughout our property. This is an opportunity for us to take a few moments and spend some time and see if there's relatively simple things we can do to increase safety throughout our property, including the parking lot, the coastal trail, and so forth. We're also planning on renovating a building. If and when we start that, how is that going to be impacted? There are a lot of issues we haven't discussed, and it just seems like we're moving too fast.
Okay, thank you. All right, Melanie, roll call.
Commissioner Matoush,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen Carly,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz,
No.
President Ryring.
No. So the motion does not carry. And we will move on to, let me find my place. Item number 14, do I have a motion to authorize public meetings to be held via teleconferencing pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Melanie.
Commissioner Chen Carly,
President Ryring, just to give the public an opportunity to comment if there is anyone.
Is there any public comment? I don't see any hands raised.
Thank you.
Thank you. Melanie, roll call.
Commissioner Chen Carly,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Aye.
President Ryring,
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush.
Aye.
Great. Do we have any commissioner comments this evening?
Yes.
Commissioner Matoush.
All right, first I want to point out that there was 29 people in attendance at the meeting. I'm very happy to see the public engaging us. I was finally able to enjoy a walk in the West Trail and see the progress that's been made. Wildlife is back enjoying the area. I say be careful close to the trees by the junction of the trail and the beach. The night herons are living in those trees. I caution looking up or standing nearby or risk a direct or indirect hit of herring poo. I speak from experience. I attended the CSDA conference in Sacramento. Ricardo Lara was the keynote speaker and spoke of lots of advances in insurance made regarding climate change. There were many other topics discussed. General Manager Pruitt and Commissioner Zemke were there also. On my way home, I drove through Oyster Point Marina, and I was noting the tremendous progress. However, more concerning, I've received multiple complaints about the new Captain Pete regarding operating as a charter boat without a commercial activity permit. Also, possible improper insurance issues and not supplying required documentation to the Harbor District. As a 3-decade charter boat operator, I know there are rules to follow in order to operate safely and with sufficient financial responsibility to protect passengers, crew, and risk mitigation for the Harbor District. So I ask, has the Harbor District received all copies of documents required to entirely fulfill the terms of a commercial activity permit that is for hire and permitted vessels must submit? Are passenger service fees being collected? If not, why and what will be done to bring this vessel into compliance? How does the Harbor District plan to deal with unpermitted activities in the future?
So thank you, Commissioner Matoush. That sounds like direction to the GM and to staff. Commissioner Chang Corrali?
Yes, something really short. Thank you. I have heard from visitors, members of the San Mateo County residents, that they really do like the West Trail. They're very glad to see that it's pretty much done and they think it's beautiful. I also wanted to thank Jim and Carrie Smith for helping me host the Culinary Institute of America, the Singapore students who have made their annual trip, except the last 2 years, to come to Pillar Point Harbor to see where their fish is or their seafood is, where their seafood comes from. And that's always a fun trip. And they appreciated that. So thank you, Jim. And if you could give Carrie my thanks as well. They were engaging. And also Lisa Damrosch from Morningstar, or from Legacy. She has taken over that responsibility from Dave Mallory, and has allowed us to visit their facility. I also want to let everyone know that the city of Pacifica has followed our lead in installing these life buoys. My understanding is that they've installed, or they're going to install 16 of them. They've worked with Eric Jones. So Jim, that relationship is being fruitful right now. And I think these are being installed in, or have been approved to be installed, I think 16 of them or something like that within their city beaches. So, I guess, Jim, what starts here, hopefully will continue to scale. So thank you for all of that.
Yes, we've been assisting.
Thank you. And that's all I've got.
Hello. I'd like to make a comment.
Lorenz, you have your hand up and I was muted.
Okay, thank you. First, I'd like to remind you that this is just a commissioner comment. It's nothing more. Last month, during commissioner comments of the Harbor District regular meeting, our board president reprimanded me, asserting that I constantly make negative comments during our district meetings. As usual, I was given no opportunity to respond, so here's my response to that comment. I and regular attendees of these meetings were not surprised by this arrogant and entitled treatment of a fellow commissioner and members of the public. I and members of the public who challenge our board president's position during meetings have been given a constant staple of this behavior. It has gotten worse as she's been emboldened by her enablers on the commission. We were elected to help provide leadership and direction to the Harbor District staff. We were not elected to Sesame Street. It is our job to help staff provide the best possible service to the public. This means providing critical evaluation when they are needed. I'd like to remind you that when I was elected to the board, I received more votes than anyone running for office at that time. And then 2 years later, when I ran again, I received more votes than anyone on this commission, including the board president. This was and is a clear statement from the voters that they continue to support my work on the commission, that they value transparency, environmental protection, public access, and support for our local businesses, especially our commercial fishing community. I sincerely hope that the board president has gained some measure of humility from her recent self-inflicted problems on social media platforms. I remind you that they have also reflected negatively on our district. And to the rest of the board, I say this, as I have said many times, please return our regular meetings to evening hours to facilitate greater public participation. We have an equal amount of members of the public as members of our board and staff in this meeting, but those members of the public on that list include media, include folks that have a that need to provide direct input into our agenda. Also, give back the opportunity to members of the public to serve on our committees as voting members. Most of San Mateo County Board allows voting members, including the Board of Supervisors, and bring back our environmental protection and climate resilience committees. That's all I have to say.
There's no more commissioner comments. I'd move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
A second. Melanie, roll call, please.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Yes.
President Ryrie,
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush,
Aye.
Commissioner Chan Corrali.
Aye.
See you next time, everybody.
Thank you.